I think one of the greatest lies modern culture has sold us is that responsibility is something to avoid. That the ideal life is one with fewer obligations, fewer burdens, more freedom, more time for ourselves. And on the surface, that sounds appealing, but I think we've misunderstood something fundamental. Responsibility isn't something that subtracts from life. It gives life meaning. People often see responsibility as labor, as stress, as something that weighs us down. But I think responsibility, especially responsibility for others, provides the highest form of purpose. Because the things we willingly carry become the things that shape us. And perhaps the greatest burdens eventually become the greatest privileges. I've experienced this in my own life. My relationship with my parents changed dramatically when I began taking responsibility for the household, paying the bills, maintaining the home, taking care of things that they once carried themselves. And what surprised me most wasn't the work, it was the love. When I was younger, I communicated love, but I didn't always execute it. And I think that's one of the lessons maturity teaches us. Love isn't merely spoken. Love is practiced. Love is action. Love is responsibility. And I think modern culture struggles with this, especially in the West. We've embraced a form of individualism that sometimes looks less like self-love and more like narcissism. People are told to put themselves above all else, protect their peace, live for themselves, and somehow they're promised happiness. But I think we've confused self-love with self-obsession, because happiness isn't found in being served. It's found in serving. Not slavery, not martyrdom, but service. Because perhaps human beings weren't meant to worship themselves. Perhaps we were meant to give ourselves away to our families, to our friends, to our communities, to something greater than ourselves. And I think that's why I struggle when young people say they just want freedom. No responsibilities, no obligations, no one depending on them. Because if you actually live that life, I think it would become very empty, filled with nothing but your own ego. Freedom from everything eventually becomes freedom for nothing. And perhaps that's why responsibility isn't a burden, it's a privilege. Because responsibility isn't weight you're forced to carry. It is the defining purpose which directs your soul onto the path that brings you ultimate fulfillment in this life. And perhaps that's what love really is. Not merely emotion, not merely words, but the willingness to accept responsibility for something greater than yourself, to protect it, to nurture it, to help it flourish. Because maybe that's why parents sacrifice, why friends answer the phone at 2 a.m, why good people carry heavy things. Not because they have to, but because they love. And perhaps to love something is to become responsible for it, not because it belongs to you, but because it matters to you. And maybe that's the secret. Meaning isn't found by asking life what it owes you. Meaning is found by asking, what am I willing to carry? Because perhaps the things worth carrying are the things worth living for. Until next time, take care.